to welcome you to this press conference today. It's been suggested that I not try to introduce people. There are so many distinguished writers and filmmakers and what have you. So I decided not to, with the exception, of course, I'm delighted to see Marjorie Stern, the grand lady of the library system here. I'm really pleased. And there's also an announcement we hadn't planned on making, but Tom Amiano said he would contribute his jokes. Lesbian Center, and I think that is very, very significant.
And one condom.
And one condom. Okay. I might also point out that the videotaping going on is going to be included within the archives. So within the archives, when they open, will be the story of how it all started. So those who are taking part today will be part of that history. The goal is to make brief opening remarks. There are a number of speakers, and we're all going to be brief. And they're going to be coming up at this podium over here. Then we're going to go to some questions, if that sounds all right. I'd like to welcome you to this public announcement of the birth of a new institution, a center focused on the history, the politics, the culture, the achievements, the dreams and stories of people who are lesbian and gay. Its focus will be California, but its relevance universal. There will be other centers in the $140 million new main library when it opens across the street in 1995. Be an ethnic heritage center, a children's center, a San Francisco history center, among others. But this one, I believe, is going to be unique. Its uniqueness is in part because of the timing and circumstance of its birth during the battle for human rights, which started in Stonewall and will likely continue into the 21st century. In many ways, this new center is born of the battle it will chronicle. If truth and public education and scholarship and history are allies, then battle-born, the Gay and Lesbian Center will become an important intellectual and institutional resource as gay and lesbian Americans seek to expand their nation's definition of human equality. Symbolically, the center will be in Civic Center looking out at City Hall. What city in America would be more appropriate? What setting more significant? On the practical level, the center will encourage research, historical preservation, public education, publications, exhibits, and celebration. It is intended to be an interactive center, reaching out to the community for advice and counsel, support, and partnership. 2 community advisory committees are being formed, one made up of scholars, archivists, publishers, writers, filmmakers, and others who will guide the library in collection development and other services. People such as Sherry Thomas of Spinster's Books, who is part of that, or Bill Walker of the Gay and Lesbian Historical Society. The other committee is going to be a fundraising group, and we'll probably have more announcement on that in the next couple of months. Over time, the Gay and Lesbian Center is intended to be seen as an institution in its own right, yet part of the library family, a valuable resource and symbol of pride. The Eureka Valley Harvey Milk Memorial Branch, dedicated in 1981 as a site for lesbian and gay literature and history, will remain in place as an important resource to the neighborhood. The Gay and Lesbian Center will support that branch and take a quantum leap up over time, creating a significant research depth collection with an aggressive agenda. We believe the center will be the only one of its kind in a public library in the United States. As president of the Library Commission, and as a gay man, I am proud to introduce a series of people who will tell the story and are bringing it to life. First, the man who appointed the current Library Commission and who helped put the library bond issue on the ballot in 1988, which is creating the new main library in this opportunity, Mayor Art Agnos.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be participating and officiating as the city's official head of our family. There are so many members of our city's official family. Steve mentioned some of them. I just want to repeat for the record those people who are part of our city's official family who are here. Supervisor Achtenberg, Supervisor Migden, our school board member Tom Amiano, the first major department head to ever serve as an openly gay man, Ed Harrington, who we had a chance to appoint earlier this year. Senator Marks, who is a longtime supporter of lesbian and gay causes, and a very special friend of mine that makes this truly a statewide event. It's really an event of national significance, but a special friend of mine who I have to acknowledge, who has been long forefront at the forefront of this struggle in Los Angeles and around the country, who is the founder of National Coming Out Day, which really underlines what we're really talking about here, and that'll be tomorrow. Rob Eichberg from Los Angeles. Welcome, Rob. One of the best remembered quotations says, "Those who do not remember history are doomed to repeat it." The man who said that, George Santayana, will always be remembered for that very special kind of insight. What will not be as well remembered about George Santayana is that he was a gay man who did not leave us a history of his life as it really was. Santayana, like so many people in those times, was responding to his times when lesbians and gay men were supposed to be invisible and leave no trace of their real lives. Lesbians and gay men have struggled against that invisibility, sometimes against some very, very overwhelming odds. One of the most famous scenes of early Nazi brutality is the scene of a book burning in Berlin. Everyone who's seen that photograph can remember the bonfire, the books being tossed into the fire, and the stormtroopers gleefully participating in that event. But few know that the first book and the first books of that burning, perhaps the ones in that photograph, were of the Magnus Hirschfeld collection, the largest lesbian and gay archives ever assembled up until that time. San Francisco is a city with a very long history of lesbian and gay people making themselves visible and making it a viable community. Some of the people who have made that history are here in this room, and they are people who are recorded in that history that will be part of this collection. And today, with the collections that are being added, San Francisco is making a commitment to the establishment of a lesbian and gay archive of national stature, the first time any public library in this country certainly has ever done so. And I take particular delight in this moment because some 15 years ago, as a new member of the Assembly, I insisted, and we won over some no small bureaucratic opposition, to have the first gay book included in the state library. Randy Schultz, who is the premier journalist of the Lesbian and Gay America, has brought forward, and Larry wrote that line, so that's what it means. So you know it's a meaningful one. Randy has brought forward the lives of lesbian and gay men in his books and has won truly national acclaim around this country. And they're recognized for their scholarship as well as their understanding and for the breadth of research that's involved in his books. And I'm truly delighted that Randy Schultz has decided to donate his invaluable collection of materials and research to our archives, which in one single step, puts us at the forefront of any collection that's ever been assembled. Peter Adair was the director of the first documentary film about lesbian and gay lives that won a national audience. Word Is Out was the opportunity for lesbians and gay men to tell their own stories in their own words, and for literally hundreds of thousands of lesbians and gay men in cities around the country was also the very first opportunity to hear the stories of lives that they could identify as part of their own. And I'm grateful that Peter Adair has chosen to make the resources that went into Word Is Out an important part of the lesbian and gay archives of the San Francisco Public Library, where they will truly be cherished. Rob Epstein is a filmmaker of national and international renown. He was acknowledged with 2 Oscars from the Academy Awards for The Life and Times of Harvey Milk and The Threads of Love. And in both cases, the stories that he unfolded have their beginnings in San Francisco's lesbian and gay community. His generosity in making these donations today is typical of his spirit and his strong commitment to the community and to the city. Being here with Rob today reminds me, and I can't help but think of a good friend that many of us had in common, who we lost last November in Vito Russo. And because of the work of all of these people who are donating today, and especially Rob, Peter, and Randy, we have at least some part of those people remembered in this work. And we will be able to let other generations who will come to learn from this work that will be available. And they will know why so many of us love them as we did. And finally, I'd like to express my appreciation to Steve Coulter, the latest in a great series of presidents of the Library Commission who have brought this library to where it is and where it is going. As the president of the Library Commission, he's had the vision and commitment that he's learned from people like Marjorie Stern to pick up the torch and carry it on, and bringing to it a very special definition that only Steve can bring to it. I'm very proud of him and all of the members of this commission and the staff who are making this a reality today. Congratulations to all.
Next, a good friend of the library and supporter of this project, Supervisor Roberta Eckenberg.
It certainly is a pleasure to be in the presence of so many relics of the lesbian and gay community. I wanted to begin by interjecting a moment of levity, lest I break down in tears at how momentous an occasion this is. And I'm known for getting carried away with the emotion, and Art warned me, don't cry this time, Supervisor. But there is something so very important about this morning's ceremony, so very appropriate that San Francisco would be today beginning its recognition of the contributions of the lesbian and gay community, culturally, politically, in terms of broadening the texture of the life of all of San Francisco, our contribution to San Francisco, this state, this nation, and the world. This is the right place for the first publicly sponsored, publicly funded collection to preserve for all time our history, our culture. San Francisco is the right place for that to happen. This is the place where so many of us began our work, and that it will be memorialized here for our children and for their children is so exceedingly appropriate. It brings one to tears. I want to thank all of you for everything that you've contributed to date and for everything that you will contribute from this day forward to ensuring that our history is preserved for all time. And I want to thank Steve for his vision and for the privilege of being included in today's ceremony. Thank you very much.
When I first talked to Carol about this project early last year in a usual shy style, she said, "Do it!" Supervisor Carol Lee.
And you've done it, or you're doing it. I love the verbs attached to this, which are preserving and celebrating and fortifying. Those are terrific images that we lesbians and gays have to advance and uphold and honor and take and declare to be our own. I think particularly in light of a kind of a bruising last couple of weeks, we need to know that there are places that we can go to restore ourselves, to affirm ourselves, and to reconnect with our community, and to have ways that, in fact, we know that we make a difference, that we create a lasting, enduring cultural contribution to literature. We know that there are more than Willa Cather and Walt Whitman, and we've just found out about the third from the mayor, and I'm sure there are more that will be unearthed. So let us have our own kind of outing that will occur here in these quarters, and let us celebrate ourselves and our history and our culture and our future. And I am honored to be among you, and this is indeed a very affirming, joyous time. And I am terribly proud that it's going to occur here in San Francisco, California, as the first place in the nation. And I know when I get personal visitors, I'm going to take them over here, and know that I personally feel an investment as well as that of a public official. So I thank you, and I thank all of you that have helped contribute to this very terribly important addition to our library system. Thank you.
couple of years ago, Roberto Esteves, who's the assistant chief of the and I visited with the advisory committee to the Eureka Valley Harvey Milk Memorial Branch, advising on how we should be working that branch collection. And the committee was quite taken with it, particularly two of the people. And I certainly mentioned one, Sherry Thomas. The other was Bill Walker, who is the co-founder of the Gay and Lesbian Historical Society of California. That led to a long series of discussions, and Bill is going to talk to us, I believe, at this point. Bill Walker.
Thank you. What I want to speak about this morning is the historical significance of this multifaceted research collection. Contrary to prevalent notions often expressed, gay and lesbian studies and gay and lesbian collections are not new under the sun. In the first decades of this century, in Berlin, Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld created a major research library related to homosexuality that Art mentioned. In America, both one incorporated in Los Angeles and the Daughters of Bilitis in San Francisco developed extensive libraries in the 1950s. One also developed an educational institute that has offered graduate classes on topics connected to homosexuality for over 35 years. Gay liberationists in the late 1960s and early 1970s frequently called upon their colleges and universities to offer pertinent classes and even departments on gay and lesbian studies. In 1971, lesbian and gay librarians in the American Library Association created the Gay Task Force to press libraries to confront self-censorship and to begin to consciously collect materials relevant to lesbians and to gay men. Frustrated by a lack of interest by most mainstream institutions, lesbian and gay historians, librarians, and activists have constructed a network of community-based libraries and archives over the past 20 years. The past 2 and 3 years has finally seen the evolution of some major collections at several prestigious universities, repositories, and also gay and lesbian studies classes and departments at numerous institutions of higher learning. What is new about this collection is that it's the establishment of a major research collection at a public institution. Unlike most academic settings, the San Francisco Public Library's Gay and Lesbian Studies Center will provide access to anyone needing it. This will be a collection that can be approached from any level. Casual readers will have access to easily browsable book and periodical collections. Community activists and organizations will have ready access to acutely needed background information or photographs portraying a multitude of subjects. Researchers, both amateur and scholarly, will have access to extensive resources of all types. This will be our center in our library, accessible to all. On behalf of the Gay and Lesbian Historical Society, I want to congratulate the staff, administration, and the Library Commission on the development of this center. We look forward as the Historical Society to a future of collaboration with the public library in preserving and making accessible the diverse histories of the queer people of this lovely city.
The senior library executive who was responsible for actually building this $140 million structure right across the street is Kathy Page.
For many lesbians and gays, books and films with gay issues and themes or novels with gay characters are the first and only contact we have with our community. For a public library that makes materials like this available, up until recently it was an unusual thing. Fortunately, here in San Francisco, for years, the library has bought books and films and magazines that deal with gay themes. But to have a public library commit to systematically, aggressively, acquiring and preserving and honoring the written and visual record of its gay and lesbian community, this is an unprecedented thing. The library, and by extension the city, is making a powerful statement with this center about the value that it places on our community. As the library's project manager for building the new main library, I'm very pleased to be involved in this project. This center is the first of several that we intend to create to try to, or to enable us to connect effectively and responsibly with all of the many communities that we serve. We have plans to create centers for newcomers to the city, the blind and visually impaired, the deaf and hearing impaired, older people, young kids, just about everybody. We aim to use the new main library we are building as a springboard to enable us to be truly effective and truly responsive to everyone. I know that the new main library, when it opens, is going to be something that we're all very proud of. This center is one of the reasons we'll feel it. Thanks a lot.
When we were first discussing the concept of the center with the mayor and his staff, the speechwriter Larry Bush said, "Oh, this is perfect for Randy. Let's do dinner and you can tell him all about it." So Larry happens to be my neighbor, did put on the dinner, and we got together with Randy. I hauled over probably more material than he ever wanted to see on the construction of the new main library, even stuff on the Pioneer Monument in case he was interested in it. And he was very enthusiastic. The author of The Mayor of Castro Street, The Life and Times of Harvey Milk, and the bestseller on the AIDS epidemic, and The Band Played On, a distinguished San Francisco Chronicle reporter, former reporter for The Advocate, Randy Schultz.
Given sort of the breadth of San Francisco gay and lesbian history in this room, and you see people like Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon and Dora Jones, I mean, we don't have to talk at great length about what's happened here in the last 20 years, but I think we always need to keep in mind that something very special has happened in San Francisco in the last 20 years. So there's been a very noble experiment that's really pioneering a new way for lesbians and for gay men to live. I think future generations are going to look back and see this period of history and realize this period of history is far more significant than I think that we even realize who are here today. And I think people are going to wonder, how did it happen? What were the social circumstances that allowed this renaissance to begin? I've sort of spent my life writing about this for the last 20 years. People say that newspaper reporting is the first draft of history. I've been writing that, and my books at best are just a second draft of history. And I think what's going to be real important 50 and 100 years down the road when people look back, and I think people will be looking back with great interest at this period, we'll be looking at the raw material before it's been filtered by writers such as myself. And that's why I think it's so important to have a collection of this. What I think is so important, and the message that we really need to get out today is also, in fact, I sort of want to make a plea in terms of supporting this collection, is that it's important that at this moment in our history that we don't lose the historical material that I think so many people in our community have collected. I think in the last decade, one of the most very important books that has been written was a book by Alan Berube, who's here, a book on lesbians and gay men in World War II, a book called Coming Out Under Fire. That book was started because somebody pulled out of a trash can letters that gay soldiers had written in World War II. And what an important piece of historical documentation for our community was saved by pulling something out of the trash can. And I just think in horror sometimes at what's being lost in trash cans around the city right now as we all face the ravages of our epidemic. We need to create a space where we can have this stuff deposited and where it's accessible to everybody. And I think that one message I hope that we can get out to our community today is we're losing so many fine people to the epidemic. It's important that we don't lose our history as well. And that's why I think this archives and this collection is so important in terms of preserving the history of the very remarkable history that we've started creating in this city uniquely in the last 20 years.
Two distinguished filmmakers will make this a multimedia collection from the day it opens. In 1985, Rob Epstein won an Oscar for his Best Documentary Feature, 3 Emmys, a Peabody, and a New York Film Critics Award in the Times of Harvey Milk. He got the second Oscar in 1990 for Common Thread, Stories from the Quilt. Rob Epstein.
Both those films, The Times of Harvey Milk and Common Threads, were Bay Area productions made by Bay Area filmmakers and Bay Area crew people, and with the love and support of the gay and lesbian community. So it's very gratifying that all of our research materials, all of our original material will be housed here in San Francisco, the city in which these films were also nurtured and conceived. And I'm really happy to get it all out of my fire trap office building, which I've been living with for 7 years, and know that they'll be secured safely. And I also hope that you'll have a pedestal in this new resource center so that someday I can read my Oscar for Harvey Milk there as well. Thank you.
Peter Adair partnered with Epstein and others in the 1978 landmark documentary on gay liberation, The Word Is Out. The two joined together again on the AIDS show, Artists Involved with Death and Survival. His latest work, Absolutely Positive, was released earlier this year and has been widely acclaimed. The Examiner called it an exemplary documentary. Peter Adair.
I was very relieved that the library went public with accepting my materials before they learned how much there are. By nature, I'm not a collector. I'm a filmmaker, and after I make one film, I go on to the next one. Unfortunately, all the elements of the first film follow me around. As part of making Word Is Out, Rob and I and the other 4 filmmakers did 250 interviews around the country on videotape in the mid-70s about what it was like being lesbian and gay. And I was, even though that was an old film and I went on to new ones, I was aware that eventually these interviews would have enormous value. And so since that time, I've been archiving them. And like Rob, I'm very relieved to now no longer have to keep them. The same process was used with other films, Rob's and my film, The AIDS Show, and especially Absolutely Positive, where Janet Cole and I and other people working on the film did 100 interviews on videotape about what it's like being positive across America. So I'm delighted and honored that they'll be in the archive. And I'm most moved by what a fantastic city we live in. Thank you.
The library is currently in discussions with a number of writers and collectors from around the country, and indeed even some people in this room. There are other people in this room we probably would like to be in discussions with. So if you are interested or know people who are interested, we certainly would urge you to get in touch with us. The man who has to run the library system, involved in building the new one and is having a major role in the technology of the new library, since that's his particular expertise. Technology is going to be really key for the preservation and access issue for much of the Gay and Lesbian Center. Much of it's going to fall on the shoulders of Kim Dell, the city librarian. Okay.
Thank you, Steve. I'm real pleased to see all of you here. And yes, Mr. Mayor, the new building will have air conditioning. In fact, one of the dramatic improvements will be the ability to keep an environment which preserves and protects the valuable materials. In 1988, the mayor, the Library Commission, and the voters of San Francisco and I made a commitment to create a world-class library right across the street from where we stand today. The new main library is on track and due to open in 1995. We also expect within the next 30 days to make a significant announcement of our move towards my goal of being electronically connected to every home and business in San Francisco within 10 years. We're in the final negotiations on a contract that will make that start happening by January 1st. We're also moving through the branch renovation program. We'll be reopening the Park and Presidio branches in January, and then we'll move into the Richmond branch and Chinatown and keep going through redoing the branch libraries. But a great library must have outstanding collections. Today, we begin a new significant effort to acquire collections that have particular relevance and importance to the people of this city. We intend to create the best gay, lesbian studies collection and center of any public library in the world. Why are we announcing this now? We've been working on it for a while, and the new building will not open until 1995. But a number, almost of planets, have aligned that make this a good occasion. First of all, the donations, and we appreciate Randy and Rob and Peter's commitment to let us preserve their materials. That's a major leap of faith, and we honor that and we thank you. The plans for the new main library is on track, is moving, and we can guarantee that we will have a center to house this material that will have no peer throughout the world. Staffing. We now, in the library, have a committed, talented head of the special collections, Juan McGinnis, the chief of the main library, and we have staff in place now to get things done. But we felt we needed to send a message that we want community involvement. It takes years to create an outstanding collection. We want to be ready for the dedication of the new main library in 1995 by having one of the best collections anywhere. And we have also found recently a way to preserve the material, facilitate its organization, and expand access to the material dramatically. Today, we have a demonstration here by Digital Computer Company of their new imaging system. And my goal for today is to teach the mayor to use it. And he can't leave until he hears it. It may be hot in here, guys. Today, we're going to show what we can do with this kind of technology. This imaging system can store 500,000 pages on one disk. And you can retrieve any page or image in seconds. In addition, we can connect these disks through the network that will be coming in January, so that within a year, we can ship images throughout this building and to the resource branch libraries. Within 3 years, we will have every branch library in the country, in the city, connected for image transmission. The technology allows us to take the rare materials, the one-of-a-kind materials, put them in a controlled, safe environment, but it allows us also to let anyone access the facsimile images. And those images can be shipped throughout the city, throughout the country, and throughout the world. My goal is not just the collection and preservation of our historical materials. My goal is creating access to those materials for future generations and for today's generation. The mission of this library is focused on access. Within a year, our program of electronic imaging should be in full-scale operation. Support by the city and the Library Foundation will make this happen. Today, we send a message. This library cares about our community and all of you in the city of San Francisco. We value the people of San Francisco, and we are committed to excellence. I want to show the mayor how to run the machine. We have other staff people, specific questions. Steve will handle any questions that you might have. But just to show, if we can, very quickly here, we have pre-stored some images, and all the mayor has to do is click the mouse. Okay. See the little mouse?
Yeah.
Drag it over the image. Put that, whatever image you want. Click this button. This is an image taken from a newspaper. We have also scanned in video, image. We can put film, we can put audio. We can merge all of these technologies into a disc that's made out of metal that should outlast all of us and for generations to come. So if you want to look at another one, just pick another little line.
That's the one that's up.
And it brings the image that fast. It's going to take a lot of work to make all these images on the computer, but we start now.
I guess you're gonna need our money, aren't you? You're gonna need our money, aren't you? If nobody gets out of it.
When you say pen, then they'll be hooked up.
I like this one.
We're going to go to questions in just a moment. And a couple more comments.
Oh, I see.
Before we go to the question and answer session, have a sense that a couple of other folks might like to make some comments. And I'd like to recognize Senator Marks and ask him if he'd like to say anything.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here today. The library announces plans for the Gay and Lesbian Center. As an example of our city's commitment to strengthen diversity, the center will provide a civic resource that is indeed unique in the world. Our city's history is a history of struggle for social justice and civil rights. Sometimes we've lost, as we did with the veto of AB 101. Sometimes we made history, as we did with Lavender Street. Always we work to move forward. This center will be not only an archive, lesbian, gay, and San Francisco history, be a resource for learning and influencing the future. All San Franciscan lesbian, gay, and straight can be proud of our library and the new center. Let me also tell you that tomorrow, when Coming Out Day is going to occur here, I've asked the Department of General Services to permit the raising of the gay flag in Sacramento, and that's been approved. That will be done tomorrow.
Before we go to questions, I know there's a couple of other people here. There's some distinguished writers. I see another elected official, Tom Amiano, Alan Ruby, Phyllis Lyon, Bill Martin. Any of you folks interested in making a
Yeah,
comment?
Tom?
Well, I'm melting. I want the Wizard of Oz in this archive to understand how it influenced my life. I just want to say, in connection with the school district, I think that this is extremely important. I have talked to Steve about interfacing with the school district so that our gay lesbian youth, as well as the youth who are not gay lesbian, know that we do have a history and that it can't be stolen or revised. And I'm very, very proud of this. It means a lot. Thanks so much.
Anyone else anxious to make the plunge? Okay. Any questions from any of the folks that have been involved? So I see that right there.
Yeah, the goals are wonderful. I mean, we're dealing with motherhood and apple pie here as far as the lesbian and gay community is concerned. I do have some concern, though. We don't have to go back to Nazi Germany to deal with issues of book burning and censorship and lack of access to books. It happens every day in libraries in America where the Catcher in the Rye is pulled off the shelves, which is relatively harmless compared to the sort of things that some people would see as the sort of things that will be in the lesbian and gay collection. An advisory committee that serves at the discretion of the chief librarian doesn't have any real power. My concern is that you're going into the lesbian and gay community, you are asking for large amounts of money and you're asking for materials, and there is no assurance in place as to control of the endowment, control of the collection, and access to the collection. 20 years from now, we don't know who the mayor will be, we don't know who the chief librarian will be, we don't know how the winds of politics will blow. And this collection could be as threatened at that point if there is no element of community control. And I would urge all of those involved to get on that fast, because I don't know how you can go and ask people in the community for lots of money unless you're assuring them of the long life and accessibility of this collection.
Let me take the first stab at that one if I could. First, I think it's safe to say that no institution in America is more committed to intellectual freedom than our public libraries. It's really part of their creed. It's what the very soul of what they're about. Second, I would say every collection that is donated or purchased by the San Francisco Public Library is done by an agreement. When both sides sign it, it becomes a legally binding contract. So all of the material you're talking about today and other people we're talking to is done under a written contract. The third point, San Francisco is seeking, the library is seeking to have a real partnership with the gay and lesbian community. We want to have deep roots in the community. We want them actively involved in this program. It's not intended that we're not going to be listening to them. You've got the contractual things on the one side. We're bringing people into the library. We want them to be very much involved. And then I would ask, if not here, where in America could you do something like this, if not in San Francisco? I mean, clearly it's possible that a Jesse Helms type candidate could win in San Francisco someday. We certainly would hope not, but conceivably that's possible. In the terms of this collection or democracy in general, eternal vigilance is the only way that you can ever guarantee anything. That and probably having a good lawyer standing by. Those would be my comments.
I'd also like to add an additional element. This library has a staff of nearly 200 professional librarians, all of whom have committed their lives and their careers to creating access to information and knowledge. I've spent over 30 years with that as my guiding principle. And we do have the support of librarianship and library associations throughout the United States and throughout the world. And that to us is a very comforting feeling that we will not take any short-term actions that endanger the integrity of the collections or the library.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got it over here.
Okay. One more question.
All right. This is a general question about the library funding. Since this is going to be a partnership between private nonprofits and the city, I guess this would be a question either for Mr. Coulter or for the mayor about public funding. If access is the key issue for information in San Francisco, and it's to provide access, then is there going to be a commitment by this administration for more public access to bring back the library service hours that were cut and to increase the book budget that is now each year falling lower and lower, so that people at branches in the neighborhoods, instead of a glitzy new Maine, can go pick up a book and read about lesbian and gays in the evening when they come home from school. San Francisco is now doesn't have as many evening hours as the city of Berkeley. So if we're talking about a world-class library, maybe it starts at world-class neighborhood branches. Is there a commitment by the mayor to increase the funding level?
Let me think of that question, I think.
Public funding.
The library obviously is a publicly funded institution, and we're seeking private funds, not only for the Gay and Lesbian Center, but other aspects of the library. There's a $30 million program that Mel and Charlotte Swig are heading up to furnish the new main library. The library has certainly taken its share of cuts in the economic crisis the city has been facing over the last several years. Literally every city in America, every state, indeed the federal government is facing. On a percentage basis, I think the library has taken a lower percentage cut than have a number of other institutions. So I think the Berkeley is an interesting comparison. The Berkeley is funded entirely different as a separate library tax. That allows them to operate radically different than does the laws in the city. Now the library would certainly be open to the possibility of changing the taxing structure, and indeed we have been exploring that privately with different folks. It would have to be done in a ballot issue, and we're looking at it. We're still a long way down the road on deciding to go that direction.
Well, it's been a year now since the library commissioner brought that up. Can the mayor address that question about when and if he'll get behind the library tax? Because Prop 13 allows, there's a loophole that allows that.
Well, certainly, to answer your question, we have a very strong commitment to the library system, but no single institution in our city's family of institutions, from healthcare to public safety to public transportation to housing to libraries to schools, can be held exempt from the difficult recessionary deficit-ridden times that we've been going through in the last 3.5 years. And I think there would be a resentment if one were held out from the sharing of the difficulties. As you heard from the president of the commission, that the library has had a lower share of cuts than many of the other institutions that are also important in meeting the fundamental human needs of the people of this city. So what I can give you a commitment to is that we are seeking to improve our funding. And most of the cuts that came this year came from state cuts, not from city cuts that affected our library system. But I think it's important to correct a misunderstanding. The new library, main library, is not going to be a glitzy downtown library. It's going to be a very glitzy neighborhood library. And the technology of the 90s and the year 2000 and afterwards are really going to connect, as you heard Ken speak, are really going to connect the main library with every single home in this city. So the whole phenomenon of neighborhood libraries will be reevaluated so that neighborhood libraries may have a different role than having the same number of books that they had in the 1940s that are available under the new technology. And I think we have to constantly be evaluating how it's going to be presented at that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're glad to talk informally.